One more letter. Walter Hughes was 68 years old. He lived alone in a small red brick house at the edge of town. The house was quiet, just like the street outside. Most of the neighbors had moved away. And the children who once played under the trees were all grown up. Walter used to be a mailman. For 40 years, he walked through the same streets, carrying letters, packages, and postcards. People smiled when they saw him. Some invited him in for coffee. Others gave him cookies in winter or lemonade in summer. He was part of their daily lives. But now, he was retired. His wife, Helen, had passed away 2 years ago. And since then, the house felt colder, even in summer. He still made tea for 2 in the morning. Then looked at the empty chair across the table and remembered. One gray afternoon in October, Walter decided to visit the old post office. He hadn't been there in a long time. The building looked smaller than he remembered. But it still had the same dusty windows and heavy wooden door. Inside, the place was quiet. A young woman behind the desk looked up and smiled. "Can I help you?" "No, thank you," Walter said. "I just wanted to look around." He walked slowly past the mailboxes and into the back room. The air smelled like paper and time. Boxes stood in tall piles, full of letters no one had claimed or sent. Then he saw a small box in the corner. It was full of old, yellowed envelopes, some of them 50 years old. They were part of the dead letter office. A place where letters with no clear address or sender waited, and waited. Walter picked up one of the letters. It had no stamp, but there was a name and a street he still knew. He turned it in his hands. The paper was dry, the ink faded, but the words were clear. He put the letter in his coat pocket. I'll deliver this one, he whispered to himself. Just one. The next morning, Walter got up earlier than usual. He put on his old uniform jacket. It didn't fit perfectly anymore, but it still made him feel like himself. He took Max for a short walk, then made a cup of tea. On the kitchen table, the letter waited. Just like it had waited for years in that forgotten box. The name on the envelope was Anna Whitmore. The address was still there, written in soft blue ink, 21 Maple Street. Walter knew Maple Street. It was just a few blocks away. He remembered walking there many times, long ago. He slipped the envelope into his bag, took his cane, and stepped outside. The air smelled like leaves and cold earth. The wind moved slowly through the trees. Walter walked carefully, his steps steady but slow. When he reached the house, he stopped. Number 21 was small, white, and quiet. The paint on the porch was old. A bicycle stood near the fence, too small for an adult, too new to be forgotten. He rang the bell. A moment later, the door opened. A young woman with tired eyes looked out. She wore a sweater and jeans, and held a little girl by the hand. Yes, she asked. Walter smiled gently. Good morning. I'm not a mailman anymore. Not officially. But I found a letter addressed to this house. To Anna Whitmore. The woman looked surprised. Anna was my grandmother. She died when I was 12. Walter nodded slowly and took the letter from his bag. I don't know what's inside, he said. But I thought, maybe someone should read it. The woman took the envelope. She turned it in her hands, as if holding something delicate, almost alive. I never knew she had a letter that wasn't delivered, she said softly. Thank you. There was silence for a moment. The little girl looked up at Walter and smiled. Would you like some tea? The woman asked. Walter hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that, he said. The living room was small but warm. A soft light came through the curtains. On the wall, there were photos in simple wooden frames. Old people, young children, smiles from the past. Walter sat on the edge of the couch. Max, his little dog, curled up near his feet. The young woman, her name was Claire, brought 2 cups of tea. She sat down across from him, the letter still in her hands. I don't know if I want to open it, she said. Her voice was calm. But her fingers touched the envelope carefully, like it was something fragile. You don't have to, Walter said. But maybe it was waiting for you. Claire looked at him for a moment. Then she nodded. Slowly, she opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, folded twice. The paper was old, but the words were clear. She began to read aloud. Dear Anna, I don't know if this letter will reach you. I don't know if I have the courage to send it. But I must try. I was wrong to leave. You asked me to stay, and I was too proud. I thought time would fix things. But time only makes the silence louder. If you still think of me, even now, know this. I never stopped thinking of you. Yours, Joseph. Claire was silent. She stared at the page for a long time. Joseph. She whispered. That was my grandfather's name. But my grandmother never spoke about him. I thought he died young, or left her. Walter didn't say anything. He just watched her, letting the quiet fill the room. She raised my mother alone, Claire said. She was strong. But maybe, she was also sad. Walter nodded. Sometimes, we carry silence for too long. Claire folded the letter and placed it gently on the table. I think my mother should see this, she said. It might be hard, but it's part of who we are. She looked at Walter. Thank you for bringing it. Walter smiled, and for the first time in a long while. He felt something warm inside his chest. You're welcome, he said. As he stood up to leave, Claire followed him to the door. If you find more letters, she said, will you bring them too? Walter looked at her, surprised. Then he smiled again, a little wider this time. Yes, he said. I think I will. That night, Walter sat by the window with a blanket on his knees. The street outside was dark. Only one streetlight was on. And the wind moved the dry leaves in slow circles. Max slept on the rug. The house was quiet, too quiet. Walter held a small box on his lap. It was made of light wood, and the corners were a little broken. He hadn't opened it in years. Inside were a few things. A photograph of Helen, his wife, when they were young. A keychain from a trip to the coast. And a letter. The envelope had his name on it. The handwriting was round and soft. He didn't need to open it. He had read it many times. It was the last letter Helen wrote to him, a few weeks before she died. He opened it anyway. Walter, if you are reading this, I'm probably gone. Please don't sit in silence. Don't live only in memories. Go out. Do something good, even if it's small. You always carried letters for other people. Maybe now you can carry something more. I love you, always. Helen. Walter closed his eyes. He breathed in slowly. His chest felt tight, but not in a painful way. It was something else. A feeling he hadn't allowed in for a long time. He sat there for a while. Listening to the wind and the soft breathing of Max. Then, he stood up. He walked to the kitchen. He made tea for two. And for the first time in many months, he felt that someone was still sitting with him. Not in body, but in memory, in words, in the quiet. 2 days later, Walter opened the box of letters again. He didn't rush. He took his time, reading the names, touching the paper. Feeling the quiet stories sleeping inside the envelopes. Then he found one that looked different. It was written on blue paper. And the handwriting was big and careful. Like someone young had written it. There was no last name. Just, to Dad. The address was still clear, 14, Brookside Lane. Walter held the envelope in his hands for a moment. It felt heavier than the others, though the paper was thin. That afternoon, he walked to Brookside Lane. The house at number 14 had a yellow door and a wooden bench outside. A man sat there, reading a newspaper. He looked to be in his 50s. With gray in his beard and deep lines on his forehead. Walter walked up the path slowly. Max stayed behind, sniffing leaves. "Good afternoon," Walter said. The man looked up. "Hello." "I used to be a mailman," Walter began. "And now I deliver lost letters." "I found this one. It's old, but it has your address." He held out the envelope. The man took it, frowning. Then he read the words, "To Dad." His hands stopped moving. "My daughter wrote this," he said softly. "I know this writing. I remember it from when she was small." Walter didn't say anything. He just stood there, waiting. The man didn't open the letter right away. He stared at it, like it was a ghost. "We haven't spoken in a long time," he said. "Since she was 16. She left. I was too hard on her." "I thought I was right." His voice was low. Not angry, just tired. "I didn't know she wrote me a letter." Walter nodded. "Sometimes, people send words even when they're afraid no one will read them." The man looked at him for a long moment. Then he stood up and opened the door. "Would you like a glass of water?" he asked. Walter smiled. "Yes," he said. "I would." The kitchen was small and clean. A kettle boiled softly on the stove. The man poured 2 glasses of water and placed them on the table. Walter sat across from him, Max resting near the door. The letter lay between them. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then the man picked it up. He looked at Walter. "I think I'd like to read it out loud," he said. Walter nodded. The man opened the envelope. Inside was one page of lined paper, folded once. The writing was big and uneven. There were hearts in the corners. His voice was quiet as he read. "Dear Dad, I'm sorry I shouted. You were angry, and I was angry too. But I miss you now. I want to come home, but I don't know if you want me to. At night I look at the stars and think maybe you're also looking. Maybe we are not so far then. I still have the key you gave me. I still remember how you made pancakes on Saturdays. I still love you. Love, Maya." His voice broke on the last line. He put the letter down slowly. Walter said nothing. He just sat there, present. The man looked at the paper again. "She must have written this when she was 16, he said. "That was the last time we spoke." Walter nodded. "It was never too late to send it." The man gave a small, sad smile. "I thought I was doing the right thing." I thought silence would teach her something. He looked out the window for a moment. Then back at Walter. "Maybe it taught me something instead." They sat for a while, not needing words. Then the man said quietly, "Thank you for bringing her voice back." Walter stood, gently touched the back of the chair. "You still have the key," he said. The man looked down at the letter, at the table, then at Walter, and nodded. The next morning, the sky was pale and cloudy. Walter stood at the window with a cup of tea in his hands. The tea had gone cold, but he didn't notice. He was thinking about Maya's letter. He was thinking about the man who read it out loud, with tears in his voice. He was thinking about how the world could change with just a few honest words. Walter had delivered thousands of letters in his life. Birthday cards, bills, wedding invitations, news of death and birth. But this felt different. This was something more. He sat down at the table. There were no letters today. No addresses. No names. Just the quiet house, Max sleeping in his usual spot. And the feeling that something inside had shifted. He opened his notebook, the one he hadn't touched in years. The paper was still white, the first page still blank. He picked up a pen and stared at the page for a while. Then he began to write. Helen, I've been carrying a lot since you left. Letters, yes. But also silence. Yesterday, I watched a father hear his daughter's voice after years of nothing. It broke something in me. Or maybe it opened something. You told me to go out and do something good. I thought it meant helping other people. But I think it also means helping myself. I miss you every day. But today, I feel you here. Thank you for that. For everything. Always, Walter. He closed the notebook and placed it on the table. Then he stood up, picked up Max's leash, and reached for his coat. There were more letters to find. Weeks passed. Walter kept delivering letters, one at a time. Some were received with tears. Some were returned with confusion. Some doors stayed closed. Some opened with a smile. Not every letter changed a life. But each one carried something: a voice, a memory, a chance. And slowly, Walter changed too. He no longer felt like a man just filling the silence. He felt like someone who was part of something, even if he couldn't name it. Then, one morning, he opened the box and saw only one envelope left. It was thin, almost weightless. There was no name, no stamp, no address. Only 4 words written in small letters: "If anyone is listening." Walter held it in his hands for a long time. He looked at Max, sleeping peacefully by the window. He looked outside at the quiet street. Then he sat down at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. The letter inside was written by hand, in simple lines. "I don't know if this matters. I don't know if anyone will ever read this. But I need to write it down. Sometimes I feel like I'm standing still, and the world is moving past me. I had dreams once. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to travel. I wanted to feel like my life meant something. Now I go to work. I come home. I sleep. And I do it again. I don't want to disappear without leaving something behind. So this is it. If anyone is listening, tell me. Does it ever make sense? Walter read the letter once. Then again. He folded it carefully and placed it back in the envelope. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just sat there for a long time. Listening to the wind, to the stillness. And to something he could not name.